Hi, it's Laura Slade Wiggins from the Rings movie franchise. Just reminding you to check out the horror movie podcast that I listen to. Don't go out there.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. We really appreciate all the support. This has been an awesome year, 2021, kicking it off great. Before we jump into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. You can find all of our episodes, our interviews, our blogs, which I need to write one. And we haven't read a blog in a while. We need to knock the dust off of that. We got our store, our celebrity shout outs, and we've got all of our social medias there. Direct links if you want to check that out. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search Don't Go Out There and you'll find us.
Guys, Nico has said that this podcast will be free and will always be free, and that will continue to be the case. We do, however, get people all the time ask us, how can you help us out? The biggest way that you can help us out is to support our sponsor, Loot Crate. Every time anybody signs up with our code BF15, that's B as in brothers, F as in frog, 15, then we get a little piece of everything that is purchased, and that helps us basically keep the lights on. So any of the crates, anything that you buy from there, there's the Fright crate, there's the Pop Culture crate, there's a ton of them. And, I'm actually a subscriber myself and love it. Love everything that we get. So again, lootcrate.com. Put in the code BF15, B as in brothers, F as in Frank, 15, and that will get you 15% off and help us out a little bit. So, again, thank you guys for everything.
And tonight's film review is Brother Mike's pick. We're taking on 2000. He's back to his old ways of picking these iconic horror movies, whether he likes it or not. We're taking on 2002's The Ring. Mike, do you want to just give your general overview and why you picked it, man?
Yeah. So, you kind of touched on it. I was looking, when we decided to do Freestyle Month, I was looking for something to kind of go back to how I used to pick movies, which is not at random, but let's tackle some of these big time ones that have cult followings or are just really well known and really well thought of. And let's go ahead and tackle those. Whether I like them or not is irrelevant. I just feel like we owe the audience occasionally to throw one of these big time movies in there. And I'm willing to sacrifice my pick over stuff I like. If we did stuff I liked all day, we'd be kind of screwed. I'm just going to be honest with you.
We'd just be doing Halloween movies every week.
I was going to say it'd be Halloween. It'd be Halloween and Friday 09 just over and over again. No, so I decided, I didn't want to necessarily do J-horror, but I knew that it's popular even, here in America. And I decided to go with, one of the remakes. It was right down to this and The Grudge. And from what I remember liking The Ring more. And I think that holds up. I think that holds up.
It's better.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Grudge franchise in general, so I went with The Ring. And, as far as my thoughts on this movie, just real quick, I think it's a genuinely scary experience if you're watching it for the first time. I could completely see someone immersing themselves in that environment and being scared shitless with everything that goes on. I think it, and we kind of talked about it pre-show. This movie has a chance to be a good discussion episode more than breaking down the film. This movie touches on a lot. And some of the stuff, obviously there's a Japanese original, Ringu, which I think is really good, but it's a little different. Not much different, but it is a little different. And I do think some of the stuff they're trying to say in that movie doesn't translate to the American version, but I still stand by this being one of the better remakes just in general in horror. There's a lot of bad remakes, as we know, but in the select few that I think are good, this is one of them. I think the acting is really good for the most part. There's some roles that I think one in particular. If you're a fan of the ex-husband, you're not going to like my opinion. But
Man, I like the
hey, he's
ex-husband.
got beautiful hair. Now, I will say I'm jealous of his hair because I'm losing mine. So I'm envious of that. But for the most part, I think the acting is good. The child actor is great. There's some genuinely scary stuff, and it takes a lot to get a little bit of an unnerving feeling out of me. And this movie has the ability to do it. Um, I think it's really good. I think the sequels after are not that great, although I kind of liked Rings. I have a soft spot for Rings. Ring 2 I can leave on the table. I'm excited to talk about it. Like I said, I'm already rambling, so I think we're going to have a fun little discussion here. See, Nico was nodding with me on that. He was talking bad about the movie in the pre-show. He's bamboozled me. He's hoodwinked me. I don't appreciate it.
Hey, you'll see what I'm about to say. All right, so I got a tweet saved that I found last night. It took me a little bit of work to find this tweet too. But October 18th, 2019, when we first started Don't Go Out There. It was back when I was on the account a lot, and I kind of tweeted bold statements without putting my initials, and I apologize for that. But I quoted this guy, Horror Movie Review 73, and he said, 17 years ago today, The Ring was released. And I quoted it saying, overrated movie in my opinion. Well, me and my girlfriend, we watched this movie a couple months ago, and I remember thinking, that was better than I remember it. Then rewatching it for this review, I was like, okay, this is a really good movie. But me and Brian were talking before we started, and I agree with him 100%. The biggest thing holding this back to me is the rewatchability factor. I would never, not 9.5 times out of 10, I'm not going to pick this movie up just to watch for entertainment.
Right.
But watching it I think it's a really, really good movie. And I agree with Mike. I think the acting is great, especially Naomi Watts, phenomenal. The little kid bothers me. He was a good actor, but he bothers me calling his mom Rachel. You need to call her Mama. What's wrong with you? And I still think
that
the
adds
ending
to the scariness of that kid. I really do.
I know, but it pisses the Southern off in me, though. You know, the Southern part of me off. But I think that the opening scene and that ending scene, the two deaths, awesome. Especially the ending. I love the ending scene. But yeah, I don't think this movie's perfect. Like I said, the rewatchability is very, very low. Kind of like The Exorcist, but I would still rather watch this over The Exorcist any day.
Oh yeah.
I enjoy this movie honestly a lot more than October 18th, 2019 or whatever. My mind is completely changed.
Brian, before you go, I just want to say one more thing I forgot. This is a well-made film. I think the camera work is great. I think the effects outside of one shot is great, and I'm willing to forgive it because everything else is good. And I think the cinematography is really, really good. I go back and forth on if I have a problem with the blue-green tint that the whole movie has.
I love it.
But that also
I
kind
think it's good too.
but it's also kind of the tint that a lot of the Saw movies have a little bit. Like there's some bluish green tint there, so I'm willing to forgive that as well. So it doesn't take me out of the experience.
And before you go, Brian, I'm gonna let you go. I promise.
You're good.
But the one
Fuck
other
that
nitpick
guy.
I have, one other nitpick I have is the ending still kind of confuses me. And I guess I am one of those horror fans where I didn't get it, like we were talking about earlier. The ending still kind of confuses me a little bit, but overall, still enjoyed it. Go ahead, Brian.
I agree with you, Mike. Fuck that guy. So anyway, I didn't see this one in the theater. I did see it when it came out, but I haven't watched it, again since then at all. I remember the hype around it. I remember people talking about how scary it was, and I mean, hell, like Mike was talking about earlier, this thing started a trend of Asian remake movies, over here in the States with The Grudge, Dark Water, Pulse. I know all that came out around the same time. I had pretty fond memories of this movie, and not much has changed after this rewatch. Like Nico just said, I am big on the rewatchability on this one is not high at all for me. And don't let that take away from the movie. Now it's a very, very well done film, like Mike said. I think it's a very good movie. I have not seen the original Ringu, but I know this one had a lot of source material between those original adaptions. I think there's even another one, and the book. And I think it does a good job with it. It definitely seems to know where it came from and pay homage to them. Like you said, Naomi Watts, I agree, does an amazing job. Um, Honestly, I think the entire cast is right there with it. Even the boyfriend's amazing main. I'm in agreement. Just I think it's an amazing job all the way around. What I do like about this is that it does a great job of being, especially at the time, very unique. It's almost a Seven type mystery, almost with some like horror, some supernatural elements to it. And I love that movie too. But I like it a lot. It's just not a movie where I'm going to go. If I just feel like watching a movie and grab the Ring and pop it in. It kind of has that long run time, which you don't feel the first time you watch it. At least
Right.
I didn't.
Not the
But
first
the
time.
rewatch, yeah, right. But the rewatchability,
Yes.
I kind of did feel that and was kind of like, oh, okay, come on.
Right.
But that's just my opinion. But yeah, I'm ready to get into it too.
Yeah, before you go, Nico, you mentioned the runtime. You're absolutely freaking right, because you feel it the more you rewatch it, and I think partially because you know what's coming. But you know my stance, and I know I've caught a lot of heat over this. If you can't say what you have to say in 90 minutes, 9 times out of 10 you lose me anyway. You have to be special. Titanic, Halloween. Oh, sorry, Rob Zombie. Halloween. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
But
All
no,
credibility lost.
but no, I think the runtime is felt, and I do think that this movie. I've seen some complaints online, and it's very well thought of, which I'm glad we're covering it. Um, I I think some of the technology ages the movie, but I also think it helps the
I don't.
movie. See,
Right, I agree.
I think there's some of it that helps the movie because I think there's a hidden underlying message there that is very applicable today. I think that's kind of fun. So
Yeah, I'm kind of like Brian with Stanley Kubrick in The Shining. All of these shots of the rocks and the waves and the tree. It's like, do we really have to see this over and over and over and over again in this movie? It's like, if you cut all this out, that's at least 5-10 minutes.
hey, I got to tell you, I had a former English teacher of mine listen to our Shining episode, and she is in the Brian Hathaway hate club after that. That comment set her off. She texted me immediately and said, "Who's this Brian guy, and what's wrong? He's outside of his mind." Which I said, "I value your opinion. There are some long overarching shots there. Let's be fair, a little fair here." Stanley did kind of go overboard. But anyway, I'm excited to talk about the Ring. I wanted to bring that up on the show because it was like at the end of last week. I haven't had a chance to talk about it.
Tell her to get in line. Mind that hate club. That hate club is full.
She's still listening, so I'm sure she's going to hear this episode. So,
All right, guys. The film starts with two teenage girls watching TV and discussing electro arrays, and the other girl asks about the video you watch and you die. Your phone rings after you finish the video and you die in 7 days. Katie says she watched this video she and her boyfriend did a week ago. She starts to choke and convulse, but it was just a prank. Becca asks if they did anything and start a play fight, and then the phone rings. Becca asks, there really is a tape? Katie and Becca creep the house and finally answer the phone. False alarm, it's just Katie's mom. Katie hangs it up, and a TV randomly turns on in the living room. It's just a bunch of static on the TV, and Katie blames Becca. She turns the TV off and walks out, but the TV comes back on. And then she blames Becca again, even though she's not in the room. She unplugs the TV and hears like a scary grunt noise in the other room, and she shuts the open refrigerator door. Katie calls for Becca and goes upstairs. She sees water on the hallway floor flowing from the room. She opens the door and the video is on, and she screams, and you see her face change. Now we see Aiden drawing in class, and we hear an argument in the hallway. Aiden's mom comes in the classroom to pick him up from school. The teacher asks Rachel for a moment of her time. The teacher brings up Aiden's cousin's death, and she says he may be expressing himself in other ways besides talking. She shows Rachel the drawings Aiden has been doing. Rachel says he'll be okay, and the teacher drops the bombshell that he drew these last week, not in the previous 3 days since Katie's death. Rachel and Aiden head home. She tucks him in bed, and he says he's too tired for a bedtime story. He says we don't have enough time before we die, and she tries to comfort him, and he tells her about Katie, saying she didn't have enough time. He rolls over and says, "Good night, Rachel." Next morning, Rachel scrambles to find her black dress, and she goes into the living room and finds her dress on the couch and sees Aiden dressing for the viewing. The two enter the home, and Aiden drops the flower by Katie's picture in remembrance. People say kids don't have strokes unless they're on drugs, and ask why is there a closed coffin. Rachel consoles Katie's parents. Katie's mom says she spent hours online and asked doctors what happened to her daughter, to no answer. The mom says you can find out what happened, and we get a flashback of when the mom saw her face, and this is the reveal of the face of Katie. I just wrote terrifying. Rachel goes outside, and some other girls say Becca is in a mental hospital now after the incident with Katie. A guy named Kellen says it was a tape that kills you when you watch it. They tell Rachel about her boyfriend Josh, but he's dead now too. Died the same night Katie did. Aiden sees a vision of Katie going upstairs. He marches upstairs and enters the room Katie was in. He sees like this force in the reflection on the TV. Rachel gets Aiden. He says it's not her room anymore. Rachel sees a picture of Katie and Aiden, and she looks through a scrapbook of Katie's, and all the women's faces are blacked out. And she finds a receipt for a photo processing receipt before she leaves. All right, that's the first two scenes I got. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, the opening with Katie and Becca reminds me a lot of Scream 4 opening, honestly. I like the tension it built up with Katie, but I don't feel like the movie could really make up its mind on whether like they wanted her to be freaked out or not, or thought I was just being clever, which to me it wasn't. Like she's not. The phone rings, and then she's freaked out again. I don't like the fake out after fake out. Almost to me takes away from it a little bit when it actually does happen. But once it finally does happen, I think Amber Tamblyn did a very good job here. I love that little motion, I don't know, apparition type thing, whatever you want to call it, in the back of the TV. I think this little I guess since there's no title card and stuff, the opening, I guess I thought that was very well done. Um, and then you have that beautiful transition, to the drawing with the crayon. That's another thing about this is I think it's shot very well by Gore Verbinski, who I think he went on to do Pirates of the Caribbean like immediately after this, and also I think this was edited extremely well. Craig Wood is to give credit for the editing. He would follow Verbinski to Disney to do the Pirates movie, but he's also like big with the Marvel properties as well. He did Guardians movies, Ant-Man, etc. So this movie had some heavyweight players behind it for sure. They do so good from, like I said earlier, not having the little title screen entrance to like flashing those images of the video throughout the movie to subconsciously, kind of bother you. Like I first saw that in Fight Club, but again, I think it's very unique. Like Mike brought up with that whole bluish greenish hue that lays over the entire film. As well as that they let the sets so in a way like where nobody cast a shadow, so it kind of to create this like creepiness subconsciously. And I give them props for the extents they went to. David Dorfman plays Aiden here. I kept trying to place him, and then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, 03 Texas Chainsaw, definitely. He was Jedediah in that movie. He's credited for the Second Ring as well, but for the life of me, I can't even remember that movie. I'm not even 100% sure if I've even seen it. So if we ever do that again, I guess it'll be like, or if we ever do that movie, it'll be like me seeing it for the first time for sure. Um, and man, you called it terrifying, but that I don't know. I wrote down as a jump scare, but I think it's too good to even call it that. So I'm not sure what to call it. But when it shows Katie's face in the closet and that flash when her mom's talking about it, good God, like that was creepy looking as hell. And I think it was extremely well done. I will say that they said the doctors and coroners that did the autopsy like found nothing out of the ordinary, that, it was just a heart attack. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, did her face looking like that not raise any questions? Like, that just seems like, well, wait, what? And the last thing I'll say about this is I have a couple of things like this, and Nico brought it up where he kind of didn't understand some parts. Well, this is one part that I didn't understand, is some of the supernatural parts. And for example, in this scene, like I didn't really understand how Aiden could see that whole apparition, like ghost, almost like a cloaked invisible person thing, that's in the back of the TV when he hadn't seen the movie, he hadn't seen the tape. So, it's like it kind of, and maybe when you read the book and it goes into more detail, that's what was a little bit confusing to me, was like how she was affecting some people like him that didn't. I thought you had to see the tape for it to be really, kind of start affecting you, but I guess not. And then if not, then why did she just choose him out of nowhere? So anyway, go ahead, Mike. That's all I had.
Oh no, I touched on that too, but I'll wait till we get to that. But what I really like this opening, and it's hard. It gets harder every time to not think of Scary Movie 3 when I watch this opening. It's very, very difficult because that is such a good. They do a good job in Scary Movie 3 parodying this scene, and I really did myself a good thing this time by removing that from my brain for a short period of time and just getting sucked into this film. And I think these are two relatable characters as far as everybody knows two teens like this, at least to me. Um, and I feel like they could be friends in real life. So I'm bought in. I agree with you, Brian. I didn't like so many fake outs. It did remind me of Scream 4, which that movie is supposed to be meta satire, and that's the vibe I got in a very serious film. It was a little out of place to me, but it didn't completely ruin anything. I think the shot when when it does finally happen is a cool shot, especially with what we get later when we see the face, which I think you guys both touched on it. That's something that for me, again, hard to do, can make me feel very unnerved, and it does a great job there. Um, you talked about going right into the shot with the drawing and the crayon. It's fantastic, and it's something that I didn't. The first time I ever saw this movie, that's not the stuff I'm paying attention to, obviously. But when you go back and watch it now for this show that we do, and you notice stuff like that, and it's right into the crayon on the paper, and it's so subtle, but it's so good. It's no wonder he got the Pirates of the Caribbean gig, which I love the first two of those movies. So um, it's just really well shot, and I like the scene in the
I like
classroom.
all of them. I'm a big
Right,
fan.
I I like the franchise as well. I like the scene in the classroom because for me, it kind of establishes it establishes kind of a fractured mother son relationship. At least to me, there's a little bit of weird. Not obviously there's something wrong at home. Like it's not a perfect dynamic there, and I like that. This kid is very Damien to me, but not overboard, and I think that's a good thing. You mentioned him being Jedediah. This last rewatch, that's the first thing I thought of because I've watched that movie more recently than I've watched this movie. I was like, that's Jedediah, which is hilarious because he looks funny as hell with the teeth in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But yeah, I think the funeral scene and all of that, I think it's just it it makes the movie. It kind of took me back into the movie a little bit because I touched on it being a little out of place, having all that fake out stuff. That made it very real. Made it, it's a mom. She wants it investigated. You get to see the grieving people after. You get to see Katie's face, which is just a shot I'll never forget. And upon it's been a while since I've watched this movie. I forgot that the four other people died. Honestly, I thought it was Katie straight into let's figure out what's going on here. And so, the actress who plays Becca does a great job in her last two appearances in this film. I think it's really really well done. But that I'll tell you what, that's watch the movie with the girlfriend as well. That's one of the things didn't go so well for the other person in the room, not named me. So I think this is a good set of scenes. It's a great way to open the movie, and I think it's a great way to put us in the right headspace for what we're about to get into. I think they're great.
All right, the next day, Rachel leaves the store with the pictures. It's Katie's trip with Josh to the mountains. In one of the pictures, all the four kids' faces are blurred and stretched out. Rachel does research and reads newspaper articles on the floor desk, and they were all at 10 p.m. At the newspaper office, and Rachel, she shoos away someone firing her. She makes a call and confirms all 4 deaths at 10 p.m. She drives to the Shelter Mountain Inn where Katie stayed at. She walks in, and the receptionist does a card trick with her. And I wrote, he stinks at magic. Rachel shows the man the photos, and they never paid, and they complain of the TV not working. Rachel stares blankly at a tape and decides to stay in the cabin, in cabin 12, the same one Katie was in. Rachel enters the cabin, and she pops the tape into the VCR. And I can't really, you're going to have to watch this. I mean, I can't really do this movie that she watches justice. We see on the TV The Ring, a chair, a woman combing her hair, a reflection of Samara, a burning tree, maggots, centipede, a lot of disturbing imagery. A woman jumps off a cliff into the ocean, and the tape ends with a shot of the well in the field. Then it cuts to static. She turns the TV off and the phone rings. She answers to hear 7 days. She hangs up and runs outside into the rain. Thursday, day 1. Aiden makes a delicious PB&J and says he's going to school. Rachel sits on her bed and stares at the tape. Aiden walks to school in the rain, and he runs into a man named Noah, and they pass each other. Noah's at Rachel's now, and she shows him the blurred face photo. Rachel's face is doing the same blur effect. Rachel hesitates to show Noah the tape, and he says they're not dead from watching it. She pops it in, and Noah watches it now. Rachel goes onto her balcony and stares at her neighbor's apartment, and Noah says it was very student film-like. The phone rings now, and they don't answer it. Noah says the tape didn't scare him, and Rachel says it takes a week for the video to kill you. She asks if he thinks she's gullible, and Noah says to make him a copy, and he'll try and figure out the origin. Rachel sees she has a voicemail and deletes it. Back at the office, she goes into the audio-visual room and makes a copy and watches it again. She pauses it and touches the fly. Friday, day 2, she gives Noah the copy, and he says the numbers are screwed up. Noah says the tape doesn't have a control track, and it's like being born without fingerprints. They don't know how it got recorded. They don't see a camera reflection in the straight-on shot into the mirror. Rachel interferes, and they mess up the tape. Beth enters the room and introduces Rachel to her. Rachel storms out and doesn't want her to see the tape. Rachel and Noah argue, and she leaves on the elevator. Rachel walks under a ladder outside the building, and she matches it to the same visual from the tape. All right, go ahead, Brian. That's the next 2 scenes.
Yeah, so I love the scene where Rachel's boss comes over and says, "You're fired." And she's like, "Nope, I'm not. Get the fuck out of here." I love that. It definitely made me laugh, like in this movie that doesn't really have many of those type of moments for sure. So I appreciated it. Um, and we kind of Mike kind of touched on this one in the opening, but seeing those pictures getting developed, kind of made me think about the whole VHS portion of this movie and how it's so close to that line where DVDs came out. And if it was made a few years later, would they have done DVD instead of VHS? But like it wouldn't have been the same to me. And I agree. Like I don't know, there's something about VHS that adds so much to this, in my opinion. Just the grittiness, the imperfections of it. I don't think that this would have worked well if it hadn't been VHS. Yeah. So when Rachel was in the at the cabin place, and all those tapes, and she just knows it just happens to be the one without the sleeve. I was like, yeah. Anyway, but and there's a little fun fact. There's a deleted scene that was supposed to be here. And there's a lot of them throughout this, which God, 2 hours, this movie would have been like 2.5 hours if I had kept everything in there.
Time to get a Snyder cut, baby. 5-hour ring. Let's go.
There's some people that would love that. I, on the other hand, I think I would pass on that one. But Rachel, when she tries to watch TV, but the reception's terrible, then she finds a journal left by previous guests. Apparently, and like I said, I hadn't seen it, but that was really similar to the Japanese film Ringu, and that was also in the original novel too by Koji Suzuki. I hope I didn't butcher that, but anyway, another fun fact about the tree on the hill and kind of how it all connects. It's actually a Japanese maple, so that in itself is a nice little nod to this whole film's roots. But I said film's roots. Anyway, we'll go back. But the the best part is that the fruit it bears is actually called Samara. So obviously Samara being the daughter's name revealed later on. Again, I thought that was very nice writing there. I see you giving me a thumbs down, Mike. I see you.
El terrible.
Anyway, the tape images obviously super creepy. I thought they were very well done. Upon multiple viewings, like the images like make sense to you on the second and third viewings. But I really like the director's choice to kind of have basically the first time it shows you this to basically sit down there and watch it first person, just like Rachel does. Another choice I liked is how the countdown started on the screen afterwards, the day one, that whole ticking clock, kind of raises the stakes and sets some good tension throughout the rest of the film. I really liked that. I do love how she's obviously a believer now. She obviously thinks that there's some legitimacy to this whole thing, but she still like lets Noah watch it. It's just like, man, fuck Noah, I guess. It's just, hey, you might come over here and watch this that I think is going to kill you too. But I guess I might be in the minority with this one. But Martin Henderson, I think's great as well. Speaking of Noah, like my man, he's Hollis from Smoking Aces. But just this exchange with Rachel, like where he's like, you're not much of a dresser. It's not your typical like I don't believe you cynical boyfriend to me. I think the way that they play it's very natural. I think it's very well done. The way that they and the writing, like the way that they give you the relationship history without like anything more than that quick little super quick exchange between the two of them leaving his apartment. I think that's very well written. There's not this whole big drawn out thing. It's like bam, that exchange. So it kind of lets your mind fill in the blanks with the relationship, and I think that's super effective.
Yeah. So this is probably maybe the biggest chunk of scenes that I think me and Brian will have some disagreements on. I think for the most part we have some general consensus, but I but we do agree on the VHSs and where's that line. And I think that this movie 2002, so probably made late '01, I'm guessing, that is the line because I remember that time still buying VHS, actually still renting them at Blockbuster for all you people that love that like I did. But also having DVDs as well. They were a little more expensive then. It was like $40 for a DVD. Now it's like
Oh yeah, that was super expensive.
yeah. So I mean, again, I get the technology, and in the Japanese version, of Ringu, it speaks on something about the technology and about the technology changing. Like, there's a deeper message in the original, Ringu, not just the actual story, but what technology is doing to people. It's kind of a hidden message in that movie. They don't get super layered with that here, but I do feel like it's touched on. I feel like the tapes subliminally are kind of like watching it 20 something year or almost 20 years later now. It only dates it because if you watch this when VHSs weren't a thing, you don't know what those are. Those are just bricks that you throw in people's houses. Like, I don't know. But for me, I think it helps the movie. You kind of touched on it. I touched on it in the beginning. I think it helps the film. And so when she's like sifting through them, and like you said, this movie has a lot of that, by the way. If I had one big flaw of this movie, it has a lot of, guess this is where this is. I wonder how that got
Yeah.
there. Kind of like the well in the end where all the marbles go to the floor. I'm like, oh, what a coinky dink. Oh, how awkward.
And the picture of the lighthouse at
Right.
the
See,
library, just so happens to be the same
and
exact
by the way,
lighthouse.
I love that they show her actually investigating a case as a journalist. Like all those library scenes, I think are really good. They're tension filled. The way they shoot her eyes and stuff, I think it's really, really good. So you get to the watching of the tape. I love the first person POV. It is so good
Yeah.
to me how we have to watch it too now. There's some unsettling stuff in that tape. Now, I mean, it all makes sense the more you watch it and you get the film, but there's some unsettling stuff there. And so, again, that's probably one of the more unnerving things about the movie to me is the first time you watch it from the POV standpoint. And I think it's a really, really good scene. We talked about the ex-husband, and I mentioned not liking. I don't mind the acting. I think the acting is fine. I probably should have worded my stance a little differently. I think the acting is fine. The character, this is my biggest disagreement. I do think it's a little too stock. I don't believe you, boyfriend guy. For me personally, I think we get a little bit of the too much. Amityville. I don't believe you. What's the other? The, every every haunting movie ever, every possession movie ever, every ghost, paranormal, alien movie ever. I don't believe you, boyfriend is there, and I just was tired of that character. And it's not his fault because I do think there's some good stuff with him in this movie, but until he believes her, I don't think he's a valuable character. I just feel like I know they're exes, but I feel like why if you know this woman, why would she make that up? That doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like you should. I just hate that stock character. It's such a trope to me. And maybe this movie is it's not the reason because it happens earlier than this, but the reason it's so prevalent in these mid 2000s movies or these mid 2000s remakes. And you get it some in the like you get it a lot, and it bugged me, but it didn't take me out of the movie. Obviously, I still think this set of scenes is really good because this is the stuff that I want them to keep in. There's a set of scenes later that I feel like you could trim it a little bit. Again, my stance on stuff being an hour and a half really starts to come into effect at about the hour and 40 mark. But I think this is a good set of scenes. I love that this movie has locked me in. It's a very serious film. And by the way, you guys know my stance on anything kind of paranormal. So to get me to buy into this film being what it is, I think means it's doing a really good job. And again, nitpicks, and I'm not gonna lie, I laugh every time. It's like, oh, how did that get there? Happens like 10 times in this movie. But I'm willing to forgive some stuff when it comes to supernatural films. There's just certain things. If there's a supernatural vibe, that if a pin magically appears and and you're out of a pin, I'm just gonna chalk it up to well, it's one of those movies. So I'm willing to forgive that stuff.
All right, Saturday, day 3. We see patients in a hospital and we see Becca. Becca is being escorted to meet Rachel. Rachel asks if she remembers anything from that night or how Katie died. She asks about the videotape and asks if she was afraid. Rachel begs for her help. Becca says, "You will know and she'll show you." Becca says, 4 days. Rachel is back at the office and is shown how to print images off the tape. She stretches the tape and sees a lighthouse and tries to print it, but the monitor shuts off. She gets it back on and we trace the fly on screen again. We see its wing move even while paused. Rachel pulls the fly off the screen and she has a bloody nose now. She takes the images and she leaves. Sunday, day 4, she's at the library researching on lighthouses. She finds the one she's looking for in a book. I think is how you pronounce it. Mosco Island.
How did
She
that get
researches.
there?
What's that?
I wonder how that lighthouse got there magically. The one she was looking for, just right there in that book.
Yeah, there's just a book of lighthouses in the entire country. Yeah, I mean maybe there is. I don't know.
There's one right down the road.
She researches the island and sees the woman from the tape in a picture and prints it off. Anna Morgan. She researches on the horses now. Mysterious sickness strikes Morgan Ranch. Horses recovered after breeder's suicide. Eola County Psychiatric. What happened to you, Anna? She asked. Monday, day 5, and Noah buys some cigarettes at the gas station or whatever, and the cashier says he's going to die if he keeps smoking. Noah notices he has the same blurry face in the surveillance footage. Rachel gets home and sees the babysitter is asleep in the chair. Rachel pays her and goes into Aiden's room to see him sleep. Rachel calls Ruthie to see if she can watch Aiden for a couple days. She takes a drink of water and starts to choke. She pulls this long black string out of her mouth and sees water coming out of the speaker of the phone. Rachel goes down the hallway and into a room and sees a dark-haired girl sitting in a chair. The girl grabs Rachel and she screams and wakes up, and she sees she has like a bruise on her arm. Rachel goes into Aiden's room and he's gone. She goes into the living room and finds him watching the tape. She screams and covers his eyes, but it's too late. She asks why, and he says he couldn't sleep. He asks, "Who is she?" and the phone rings, and she hangs it up immediately. She answers again, and it's Noah. He says, "I need to talk to you." "I believe you," he says. All his pictures are blurry-faced, and she tells him Aiden watched the tape too. Tuesday, day 6. Aiden draws and Aiden draws and says, "You take my picture. I've seen you at school." Noah asks if he wishes I was around more. Noah says he doesn't think he'd make a good father. He says he doesn't want anyone else to be his father either, though. Rachel flips through pages of Katie's notebook with drawings of visuals from the tape. She goes out to the car to get Aiden. Rachel narrates about Anna's life and how you can draw a line through it. She believes her horses affected it. She tells Noah to go to the hospital to find out more about Anna, and she'll go to the island by herself to do research. And she boards the ferry. All right, Brian, go ahead. It's the next two scenes I got.
Yeah, so I probably have the most written about this little group right here. Um, so day 3. Not to be an asshole or anything, but like, what exactly does Rachel do with the rest of her days?
Thank you. She is
like
taking her sweet ass time investigating this. Let's go.
most of this shit could be knocked out in like 1 or 2 days, but she does a little bit here, a little bit day 2, almost as if it was written that way or something.
Can I make a suggestion, Brian, before you go?
Yeah.
She needs to do some cocaine, and I'm not advertising illegal, explicit drugs, but I just want to be very clear. She would have had this thing solved had she did a little booger sugar, and because it would have kept her awake. I mean, you could go the Bang Energy route, but let's be honest, those only last a little bit, right? I mean, we're trying to find out what this tape is about. That's all I'm saying. A little booger sugar might have helped her, a little overnight. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, I promise you, David Mills would have knocked it out in like 2 hours.
Oh, no doubt. He'd have been like, "Oh, this is day 1.5. I'm still here."
Those cops from Halloween 5, they would have got it nailed down.
Oh, brother.
Oh my God. Anyway, so we kind of talked about the supernatural aspect some. I do like how it slowly adds that, but it doesn't really knock you over the head with it. But like I said earlier, it's kind of confusing. Like this is another part where it kind of confused me, like where Rachel touches Becca and she knows that she only has 4 days. Like how does literally Becca know anything about this? I mean, she was nowhere to be found, by the way, at the start where Katie died. Like she didn't watch the video. Like, I guess what am I missing is Samara supposed to be like projecting this knowledge like to her and Aiden? And Rachel pulling that fly off, I thought that was so badass, but I didn't really understand how she was able to pull that off in day 3, but not day 1 when she was looking at it and touched it. Like, is Samara like gaining more power? Like the closer to day 7 it gets, that's the part that my big question mark. And maybe I didn't understand it. Maybe I didn't, but maybe somebody can explain it to me.
No, you did, but I do have some notes on that. I'm going to touch on it.
But by the way, the lady who is just inexplicably, by the way, just giving her access to her very expensive video editing equipment. But that she thought Rachel was going in there to watch a porn or something. It's just the way that whole exchange played out. I thought that was funny. And listen, computer nerd time. If you've paused the movie or even just look at the supposed web address where she's pulling up Moisco Island pictures of all those things, it's literally just on the C drive of that computer. Like it's not on the web anywhere. That's definitely an overlook there on the props department or whoever put that together. It's super distracting once it's there too, because of how many times that it shows her face. It shows the screen, it shows her face. Like it shows that so much. And I just couldn't quit looking at it. I was just like, C drive, Windows 98. Like that's where the file is. It's not on the way. I don't know. It bothered me. Sarah Rue, the babysitter with a nice little cameo. You may know her from Can't Hardly Wait or Pearl Harbor, but I, on the other hand, will always think of her as Dr. Stephanie Barnett from Big Bang Theory. So that's 2 weeks in a row with a nice little Big Bang Theory connection, as we had old boy last week. Rachel choking and pulling the rope out of her mouth, super cringy to watch. I think that's definitely a testament to everyone who did this scene. It was convincing as far as I was concerned, and in the effects. Naomi Watts acting tremendous. That whole scene, I thought that was fantastic. But then you get like, I woke up with a burn mark on my arm. If only I hold on to his old brown hat. I wonder if I can pull him out of this dream with me. I mean, sorry, wrong movie. But and last, I'll say I don't think that I'm a very big fan of them having like Aiden watch the tape. I know they were trying to raise the stakes even more, but to me, it just feels forced. Like, and it doesn't, to me, make sense in any way. The kid couldn't sleep, so he just randomly picks up a videotape and pops it in. I do like the reveal of him being their son. So I do like that whole little aspect. And now the stakes are high for both of them. But to me, like, put him in peril in some other way. I mean, you already have him some magical reason knowing stuff like Samara is already affecting him. Just have that continue or get worse, or I don't know. And that whole, speaking of that, that whole car scene with Noah and Aiden, to me, it feels super forced, a thread that I wasn't really a big fan of, to be honest.
Yeah. So I wrote down day 3. What have you been doing besides? I mean, I understand getting your 8 hours of sleep or whatever, but day 3, you're just not okay. Whatever. So I actually really like that scene with Becca. I kind of touched on it earlier, and I know. So this is kind of where the original Ringu gets lost in translation a little bit, where they didn't carry some of the themes over to the American version. And so some of the confusion, even for me, I'm like, I don't know how the hell, this, that, and everything else goes. But when you watch the original, some of it makes sense as far as the script and the screenplay, just not kind of transferring over with some of that. This stuff in the Ringu stuff, this thing kind of spreads like a virus a little bit. And so Becca, knowing she has 4 days, even Aiden, kind of being able to see things, he's kind of a medium in a like a light way. Some of that is done a little differently in the Japanese version, where they kind of touch on it, where this thing kind of moves a little more like a virus than it does just evil to videotape. This thing kind of does evil videotape, but also those around the tape are affected by the people that watch the tape. And so it kind of touches on that. But also the thing with Becca is, and there's not an explicit scene in the original, but it's more so that once you're affected by someone that watched the tape, you somehow are intertwined with Samara forever. Especially if you watch the tape, obviously you're going to die. But even if you don't watch the tape and you're in this, you're in the position that Becca's in, you kind of inherit some of those powers. And Samara does get stronger, and they kind of touch on that in the Japanese version. So there's some loss in translation there that just didn't make the. I mean, it just didn't make the American version for time, which LOL to that. But some of that I think just gets lost in translation, which is okay. I understand, because even me, I'm like, well, how in the world, or what? We talked about the quote unquote coincidences in the last set of scenes. That's kind of one of those things too. But I think that's a good scene when she holds her hand and goes 4 days. It's very creepy. I love their facial expression. I think it's really, really good. You mentioned the babysitter scene. The first time I ever saw this movie, I was fully expecting something to happen to that babysitter, because I feel like that's a character you don't show without something bad happening in that scene, or worse happening in that scene. So, God, ruthless to the dad. Just, do you wish I was around more? No. I'm like, all right, that's a truth bomb right there, son. I can appreciate a good truth bomb. He did not hold back on that at all. Yeah. So this set of scenes, I didn't write a ton, but what I like that, I kind of like that car scene. My only problem with it is, and you kind of touched on it, some of it is forced. I like knowing that they're his parents. I just kind of feel like it kind of makes me not like him. Where you been? You haven't been around. Just been chilling.
That's true.
Kind of a deadbeat dad. I know you're trying to do the right thing now, so I'm willing to forgive. You let her go on the ferry so you can stay back or whatever. I think that's nice. But a little late to the party there, pal. That's all I'm saying. But nitpick, minor, small thing. Not super worried about it. Like this set of scenes, though, especially that scene with Becca, where I just think the facials there are phenomenal. So really good, and you get him seeing, you get the kid seeing the tape, and that was something that I really was hoping would come a little later. I was hoping they'd save that for some big moment or something. I'm not really sure what, but I was just kind of hoping. So again, I like the set of scenes a lot. It's not a bad set of scenes. in my opinion. There's no set of scenes where it's like, oh, this is a run on of suck. You know, like with like you know what
I
I mean?
agree.
Like it's not Leprechaun or anything where this is just a run on of suck. It's just, there's some good quality stuff in all of these at some point.
I agree.
I agree with for the most part, except the next scene. Like something on it bothers me some. But I was going to ask, I haven't seen anything online, like on YouTube or anything, but do you kind of think they kind of stress this whole parent thing with Aiden to kind of mirror the Samara thing or something like that? Some kind of parent issue going on? Because I feel like it misses, even if it does.
I didn't think about that.
It's definitely a theme in this American version. Like the theme of parenting is definitely something, an underlying message in the American version. I don't really talk about it in the Japanese version, but in this version, yeah, there's two different quote unquote parenting struggles going on simultaneously that you're kind of learning about a little bit. So I do think you're right on that. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that while y'all two were
I didn't catch
talking.
it though. It definitely missed.
Right.
No, I just thought of it while we were talking, but the more I think about it, I feel like the Aiden and Rachel and Noah, I don't think it was effective. I think it was kind of a waste of time, honestly. But because we're trying to figure out what's going on with this tape, not about their failed relationship.
By the way, in the next set of scenes, when Noah takes the ferry, this dude built a whole ark and took the ferry. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, all right. I'll see y'all next week.
And I get yelled at. I get yelled at for the dad jokes.
I agree with Mike though. For the most part, there's not really any bad scenes, but I do have some stuff I don't like in the next couple. She sees a picture. Rachel sees a picture of Richard Morgan and reads an article that Anna had a daughter. The ferry has a bunch of cars and a horse trailer on it. Rachel goes to pet the horse's nose, and it starts to freak out inside the trailer. The horse panics around Rachel, and it breaks out of the trailer and it jumps off the ship into the ocean, evading several attempts at capture. The onlookers go to the end of the ferry and see the horse's blood in the water. Noah gets to the hospital and asks about the records of Anna Morgan. They tell him he can't have any records, and he finesses his way into finding out where the records are. He breaks in and asks, "You in here, Anna?" Rachel is dropped off at the Morgan Horse Ranch. She knocks at the door to no answer. She goes around back and sees the window from the tape. She walks around the ranch and sees a man working on the fence. She introduces herself, and he says, "You want to know about the horses?" He says most of the horses broke through the fences and jumped into the ocean. She asks, "Where's the horses now?" But he doesn't breed them anymore. He says, "Tell me what's really on your mind." She shows him the tape, and he asks where she got that and if that's the only one. He looks distressed and says he has a lot of work to do, and she asks about his daughter. "I don't have a daughter," and he questions reporter's integrity. He kicks her out and shuts the door. Rachel walks away and looks at Aiden's drawing compared to the house. Noah finds Anna Morgan's files and about her hallucinations and how many miscarriages she had at her older age. A file drops to the floor about Samara Morgan. Sessions terminated at father's request. Aiden gets a call from mom as he draws the hell out of a black circle. Rachel asks him about the drawing of the house, and he says the little girl told him to draw it. She shows him things. She doesn't like it in the barn. The horses keep her up at night. She lives in a dark place now. Rachel meets with Dr. Grasnick and asks if she knows the Morgans and their daughter. She asks what's this about, and Rachel says she's seeing things, and so is her son, and it's from that girl. "I haven't heard that in a long time," the doctor says. One summer they came back with Samara. Doctor said Anna came to her seeing things, and only around Samara. Doctor referred them to Eola Psychiatric and assumed she's still there. Doctor says ever since that girl's been gone, the island has been a lot better. Noah tells the man, I don't know, I guess he's a file clerk, I don't know what he is. Noah tells this guy he's Samara's father, and don't try and take this tape, he says. The tape is missing, and the last to watch it was the real Richard Morgan. All right, go ahead, Brian. That's the next two scenes I got, brother.
First of all, leave the damn horse alone to begin with. Why are you fucking with someone's horse on a ferry? Like, I don't know. It seems like old Rachel causes more of the issues here than not. But anyway, that whole horse scene was, I mean, it was wow. I think it was definitely disturbing, definitely effective. And again, at the end of that whole scene with the ferry, like the transition with that whole flash of the ring on the screen, again, I really liked how they did that. Um, there was quite a bit cut out of this group of scenes, which with a 2 hour runtime, like we said, I definitely understand that. But there was a lot more to the subplot with Noah, his investigation. But speaking of that, like props to my man for the whole records room, like mind fuck over that file clerk worker or whatever to find out where it really was. I thought that was impressive. I really liked that a lot. Um, Also, a very impressive shot in this group where the camera like flies over the lighthouse and you get to her like arriving at the Morgan farm. I thought that was a very impressive shot right there. Like I couldn't tell what was CG, what wasn't, and that's how it's supposed to be. So I thought that was very well done. I don't really have a whole lot on this group of scenes. The last thing I wrote was get the introduction to Brian motherfucking Cox, who, of course, is standing by some fence when he gets introduction. Because look, every time we are introduced to Brian Cox in any movie, he should always be outside working on a fence in a farm. I think that's just perfect. Fun fact here, so I can get out of here. Brian Cox, he was the only actor considered to play Richard Morgan to begin with, and he turned down a part in Ghost Ship the same year to film this movie. So I think that was a pretty good choice based on how the routes of both of those movies went.
Brian Cox, thank your manager. Much better choice. Yeah. So this scene unnerves me. It is downright unnerving to me. Not scary, but it really. Anytime you deal with animals or children in a horror movie, I'm a little on edge, and I think this horse scene is really good. Now, don't mess with the horses. I agree with you, Brian, but I do think it gets the point across of there is something real. We already know that because of the blurred face and the pictures and stuff like that. But if you were just not really focused, this horse scene does a lot to me to show that there is clearly something at work here, some supernatural power, entity, whatever. That this horse, its horse is acting the same way the horses did in the story that she had already read, and so I think that's a really well shot scene. I think it's very, very, it's filled with a lot of tension. And I'm not gonna lie, the scene with the horse jumps over the ship is it's downright sad. I don't like the death of animals, and you get one here, and I think it plays well into this movie because the minute they put that story that she sees, I knew that we were going to get a horse death at some point. So that was one way to do it, I guess, as they would say, and I think it was pretty good. There is a lot of. I agree with you, Nico. Some of the stuff with I like the shot over the rocks that you're talking about, but they do spend a little too much time. Oh, here's this patch of land. Here's these rocks. Here's this beautiful old ass lighthouse. Like there is a
Here's
little
this
bit of
tree.
the yeah, there is a lot of that, and it's a little overkill, but I do think it sets a mood. But to me, they set the mood already with the lens, so I don't need long overarching shots there. Richard Morgan, uh, I'm not gonna lie, great character, but he talks like the dad from, or the not the dad, Jesus Christ, the freaking guy from Pet Cemetery half the time. Don't go over there. You don't want to go over there. We've been here for however many years. Don't go in there. Don't go out there. Uh, he he doesn't do it the whole time, but he definitely
Is
had
he a
some.
gangster? Is he a
He
gangster
got,
from the 20s?
hey, that's how the Pet Cemetery guy talks. Damn it, you know it. You know it's true. I'm just saying, but no. So I also didn't have a lot because this is kind of where, as much as I like some of the stuff we're about to see, this is part of the movie to me where you could trim a little bit off. There is some stuff that I just wish they had maybe kind of cut, and instead of using this stuff, maybe explain the infected part a little bit more, so people would be a little bit less confused. Because again, I'm confused too. I had to look it up. I'm not smarter than the room. I literally had to look that up. So because I was curious myself. So I think this is a good set of scenes, but the fairy scene kind of dominates the set for me.
Not
And I'm
me.
just
I'm
going to
trying to
touch on
get.
it.
I'm trying
go
to
ahead,
get
Brian.
English teacher back. I'm trying to get English teacher back on my side. I love me some landscapes and some
You're dead.
mountains.
No, you're dead sure. And you didn't rate The Shining a 10. You're really screwed.
Ah, damn.
I'll just go ahead and touch on it now instead of at the end. But the parts I didn't like in these scenes was I hated the horse death. Honestly, I feel like it was pointless. Just get across the bay or whatever you're doing. I thought it was just a waste of time. Honestly, it's more like, did the horse watch the movie too? Is it scared of Samara coming after her now? And I mean, my guy Noah finessed him, but I kind of hated how he just so easily broke in and got the files. Like, there's a hospital really not having an alarm on getting broken into. Like,
I love the
what kind of operation we running around here?
game recognizes game. He finessed his ass up to there. That was really good, really smooth.
Yeah, I just hated how like there's no alarm on a mental hospital to breaking in or break. Okay, go ahead, Noah. I appreciate it. All right,
Yeah, but
next
I
scene.
also
Go ahead.
like the guy that's guarding the tapes. He's freaking
Yeah.
hilarious, and that's a really cool cameo. I'm trying to remember. There's another movie he's in where he's freaking funny, and I just can't remember what it is. I should have looked it up. That's bad programming on my part, but I think that interaction is good too. So Noah's doing his part. He's redeeming himself for me, but still deadbeat dad Noah.
Yeah, and I think that the next four scenes I wrote down is when the roller coaster starts to go back up again. Noah's on the ferry trying to contact Rachel. Rachel is back at the Morgan Ranch. No answer, so she enters the house calling out for him. Rachel looks through files on Samara's birth and is jump scared by a centipede. She pops in a tape of Samara in the hospital. The doctors question Samara's pictures and why she doesn't sleep. Samara says she doesn't make them, she just thinks them and they just are. She asks to see her mommy and she can't until they figure out what's wrong with her. Samara says Daddy is going to leave me here and he doesn't want to help her. We see Richard in the background staring on and the tape ends. He knocks Rachel over and grabs the TV and goes upstairs. Rachel questions if he killed Samara. He goes into the bathroom and says he'll never hear her whispers again. He gets in the bathtub and electrocutes himself to death. Noah runs inside and grabs Rachel as she screams. Rachel looks at Aiden's picture and remembers she doesn't like the barn. They break into the barn and see the ladder to her room. They climb up top and Rachel says she was kept here alone. Noah sees a rip in the wallpaper and says there's something under here. They rip the wallpaper off and see a tree, and Rachel says she recognizes it from Shelter Mountain Inn. Day 7, Wednesday. Rachel and Noah head to Shelter Mountain. Rachel feels confused and accepts it's too late. She tells Noah to use the time he has left, and he snaps. He rips the phone out the wall and causes a giant mess, and all the marbles that fell over on the floor stop at one spot on the floor. They use an axe and hack into the floor to see what's under there. They see the well and push the lid off of it. They shine the light down it and question how far down it is. And now we see the TV flicker on and water runs on the floor and the nails of the house coming up out of the floorboards. A bunch of flies fly up the well, swarming them, and Rachel is knocked into the well. Rachel stands up in a panic as Noah calls for her. She says she's all right, she thinks. Rachel sees the broken off fingernails and scratch marks on the well wall. She sees the lid covering back over the well. And this part always makes me laugh. Noah grabs a fire hose and he takes off running, but he forgot to unhook it and he falls over, and it's hilarious to me. Rachel gets a handful of black hair and is grabbed by a hand. She looks up the well and gets a vision of Samara looking down the well. Anna walks behind her and says things will get better. She puts a plastic bag over her head, suffocating her. All I ever wanted was you, and she throws Samara into the well. Samara wasn't dead and sees the well lid put on. Rachel's burn marks on her arm disappear. She was still alive, she says, and looks for her. Samara's body floats up and Rachel holds her and says it's okay now as she caresses her head. Samara turns back into her skeleton form as Noah calls for her. And I wrote, she says, I'm here, way too quietly. And the next two scenes are the ending. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, like while we're on that, I was like, yeah, I kept being like, God, answer him. Fuck. Like, you're not even saying anything. He's just trying to see if you're all right. Damn. But yeah, she definitely said it too quietly. And going back to the beginning of this set of scenes, look, I'll say not many jump scares get me, but that damn centipede, millipede, whatever the fuck it was, the jump scare, that got my ass. I definitely made me jump. And almost never. I cannot even remember the last time that happens. But just the placement, that was great. David Chase that plays Samara, so much like she shines so much in the set of scenes. Like and having a little girl myself, like it just pulls at my heartstrings seeing her say stuff like she loves and misses her mommy. Like God, I think she just does. Props to her. I'm going to try to get her on this show. I would love to hear her talk about this role. She does such a great bit of acting here. Richard's bathtub scene was apparently also much more graphic before they cut some of it. Trying for the PG-13 rating, they cut that, and I'll get into what else they cut here in just a minute. But my man's like, death was a super elaborate. Like he didn't. My man didn't have a toaster. Just fucking like go get a toaster. Throw that shit in the bathtub. Like I don't. His little whole contraption was super. Like holy, what are you doing? Looked like fucking RoboCop, like suiting up right there to try to get. I don't know. Um, I also love how Rachel consistently tells Noah, like, do this after I'm gone, take care of Aiden. I would be if I was if I was Noah, I'd be like, bitch, I have like one more day than you because you made me watch this movie. Like, what am I gonna do in 24 more damn hours? Like, I don't know. I kept thinking that was funny every time I brought it up. By the way, zero chance that Rachel survives that fall down the well. Like, I mean, right? Like, I mean, even if you fell into the water, I mean, she stands up in it at the bottom. I assume it looks like she's standing up, and like that she'd have broke her neck, even if she just hit the water. But that's one of those things Mike was talking about. You just kind of, it's okay. It's one of those movies. All right.
Samara,
to me, this
Samara
is
saved
definitely
her, Brian. So Samara broke her fall.
I actually think that's true, though, that Samara does save her there because there's a supernatural element to this character. And look, I'm sure there was water deep down in that well, but they threw some down there. You didn't hear any splash. And so that water wasn't there before. So something happened. I don't know. I felt it was one of those supernatural things that you kind of touched on there where it's just one of those movies where I try not to overthink all the coincidences, but God, there were a ton in this film.
As my grandpa used to say, I don't know. I just work here. But so anyway, this is definitely my favorite part of the movie. The eeriness in the well, like the finding the fingernails, to like being closed like in the well, to God Almighty, like this very disturbing murder of Samara, which like apparently in the original cut. It was supposed to be a lot more brutal. Like it was another thing. Obviously, this was the other thing I was talking about earlier. It had to be cut for PG-13. But God, it was just disturbing even just as it was. But hell, originally the plastic bag of Samara's head was supposed to like it apparently failed to subdue her. So Anna had to repeatedly hit her in the head with a large fucking rock, which you can actually see lying on the ground in some shots of the well. The rock, like apparently even only weakened Samara. And finally, Anna resorted to slamming her head against the side of the well before dumping her in. Holy shit! Like I'm glad they went with what they got. Like I would have been, I don't want to see that. I wouldn't want to see that. PG-13 or R, it would have made no difference. I didn't want to see that anyway. Lastly, I want to talk about the decomposing effects. To me, like they're the worst CG in this film. Like I didn't think they were great, but with that said, like they still hold up enough to where I wasn't like, oh my god, that's terrible. It didn't take me out of it. It's just something I noticed because I was picking the movie apart basically. But I think it's fine. But that's all I had on that group of scenes.
Yeah, so this is my favorite group of scenes, honestly. You mentioned it, Nico. It kind of takes the roller coaster back up because we get what I think is a really cool death. Now, I said the exact same thing in my living room twice. Why in the hell did you have to go to this elaborate scheme to kill yourself when you literally could have A, you work on a farm, there's a plow somewhere, B, if you wanted to electrocute yourself, you don't have a toaster, microwave, TV. No, you have a bunch of drills and hammer. Like what? Just make it real simple, buddy. You didn't. I guess he wanted to really feel the pain before he left. I mean, I'm not downplaying it. I just think it was over the top, but I still think it's a really cool death. It's hard to nitpick it because I think it came across really well. I love everything here. because it, as much as wow, what are we gonna do now? I wonder how this movie's gonna end. They're just gonna die and that's gonna be it. No, these marbles fall on the floor and there's the well. Holy Jesus. I can't believe we found this well because these marbles all went to the same spot. That's not a coincidence at all. But again, willing to forgive it, not a big deal. Because everything with the well I think is great. Minus one shot. When she falls into the well, that is bad effects. It looks like if you look close enough, it almost reminds me. It's not as bad, obviously, but it's very dummy in the door with Nightmare on Elm Street. Like it just didn't look good to me. But I hate, again, small nitpick because you can barely tell it happened so fast. I like everything with the bedroom and the hand marks, the same one that's the burn marks on her arm. I think everything kind of finally tying back in is really really good. I love the well stuff. I was shouting the same thing as you, Brian. It's almost like we have a similar brain where are you going to respond to him? He's just shouting your name over and over again. Like, I need you to say something,
Right.
anything, for God's sakes. But when, honestly, so you get to see the death of Samar, and I think I'm glad they left it very subtle because it had a greater effect to me on the death where it was just so cold and so calculated. Like, yeah, you could have gotten her head smashed and all that stuff, and that would have been sadistic, but this was just so matter of fact, just bag over the head, dumps her in the well. And I think that really shows the fact that the mom really wanted to get rid of her. And up until this point, you feel for Samara. She's kind of misjudged, and they do that a lot in Ringu, which is why the ending of Ringu is so. Having only watched Ringu once, so my memory is kind of fading here. But you kind of that ending is a twist, and they do the same twist in this movie, but it doesn't have quite the same effect as it does. But again, just a matter of fact death that I really really love. I like that she picks the body up, it decomposes back into the gross version. I like all that. She's holding the skeleton. It's a lot, and I think that if they'd have ended the movie right there, which I'm glad they didn't, that would have been a satisfying ending in a way. But there's an iconic scene that you don't get if they end the movie right there. So I'm so glad that they didn't do
Right.
that.
I'm glad they
Because
didn't.
there's one just fantastic scene that we're about to watch, and I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah.
But I, as a collective, this is my favorite set of scenes because everything in the house with Richard Morgan, everything where they're trying to think what are they going to do next. Like I just think so much of that is so creepy and tension filled. The stuff with the well is shot and it's gross and it's dirty and it's just. First of all, you can if I had to if I had to be in that water, you can forget that. I'm catching some kind of sickness in that water. That's nasty. It's black. It's been there forever. It's the stuff they swim in Louisiana. Shout out to any listeners in Louisiana, but your lakes and rivers are gross. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I have. It's my favorite set of scenes. It is creepy.
Yep. Here's the ending. The police show up and Noah says they're going to bury her next week and it's over. Rachel says she wanted that child more than anything. How could she do that? Sometimes children yell or cry or draw pictures. Rachel says she wants to go home and Noah holds her. I couldn't imagine being stuck in a well like that. How long could you survive? Rachel says 7 days. We see Aiden sleeping sprawled out on the floor at home, and Noah picks him up and takes him to the back seat of the car. He sees Mommy and Daddy holding hands. Rachel kisses him goodnight, and Noah steals Mike's line and says, "Call me sometime, unless you're renting a movie," which I think is a great line. Rachel showers and goes to sleep beside Aiden. Aiden asks what happened to the girl, and is she still in the dark place? We set her free. He says, "Why did you do that? You weren't supposed to help her," he says. We see burn marks on Aiden's arm and his nose bleeds. She never sleeps. Back at Noah's apartment, he's working, and the TV comes on to a staticky screen. Noah turns the TV off and walks away, and the TV comes back on, and we see the well. The phone rings, and Noah approaches the TV, not answering Rachel's call. We see Samara climbing out of the well and approaching closer to Noah. He backs away terrified. Rachel drives fast as she can to his place. Samara climbs out the TV and crawls towards Noah and appears like even closer to him, like with an instant flash or whatever. The waterlogged girl reveals her face and kills Noah. Rachel runs up the stairs to Noah's apartment. She runs inside and sees the wreck the place is. She sees him sitting in a chair and the floor is covered in water. She sees bloody footprints and turns Noah's chair around and sees his face and screams. Rachel leaves and sees Beth taking the elevator up to the apartment. Rachel gets home and sends Aiden to his room. She breaks a tape on the ground and lights it on fire. "What do you want from me?" she yells. She asks, "Why not me, and what did I do that he didn't?" She remembers the original tape still under the chair. She just wanted to be heard. Montage of events from the movie. They watch the copy, and Rachel tells Aiden that he'll be okay. He asks what happens to the next person who watches, and the film ends as the video stops playing. All right, Brian, what do you think of the ending?
I loved it. I love the false sense of security that you get at the beginning here, thinking that they're okay, until the bed talk. Um, Obviously, Noah, the TV scene, it's the most famous, part of this movie. I mean, it's right up there to me with the Exorcist head turn, in cinema history. And it's so well deserving of that because it's just so well done. Every part of that, from the effects, the acting, the whole spell, I thought was fantastic. I only wish that they didn't keep cutting to Rachel trying to get him. That's just a little nitpick, but I didn't want that. I know they were trying to add to the tension, like, oh my God, somebody's going to get him, somebody's going to get him. But to me, like, I think that takes away from the tension. That's just me. I don't like being like in a scene like that and then cut away to something else and then come back to it. I've said that a million times, but and Mike touched on this, and I really hate this, and I hate that it's come to this. And I don't remember now which movie we were doing, and I said literally the same thing. But like, this movie, along with Scream, has taken such a beating, like, per se, with spoofs. It's hard to not think of the Scary Movie franchise. And props to the Wayans. We did a Scary Movie already review. Like, that means they did the movie so damn well, so right, that. But it's like, it's almost, I hate that it's like taking over the zeitgeist. Like, it's like I can't watch this movie and appreciate one of the best scenes in cinema history without thinking of the Scary Movie scene that they spoofed. And I hate it. I love that, but I hate it. I don't know. It's hard for me to explain. But um, anyway, great acting by Naomi Watts here again at the end. I love the end. I love that even though the movie's over, like, you're left with that whole feeling that basically it's never going to be over. And after it was off, I mean, it kept trying to remember, like, what does this remind me of? Like, I could not remember what it reminded me of. So I did some research. I tried to find it, and I finally remembered that it reminded me of this Twilight Zone episode where, like, there was what was it? Let's see. It was like this couple that like received this mysterious box, and I even think there might have been a guy involved. But basically, like, they offer you $1 million if you press the button sealed within, like, that whole box, but tells them that, like, once the box has been pushed, someone they don't know will die. And so, like, that's what this reminds me of. So, like, it's gonna, that's fine and dandy. You can get your $1 million, but eventually, somewhere down the line, somebody's gonna push the button, and it's gonna be your time's up because you're the one they didn't know. And they'll, so that's what I loved that. I loved how it makes you think, like, in these terms where it's just almost like a never ending thing. So I don't know. I'm rambling, but anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, you're good, brother. Yeah, so obviously there's not a lot to write on these scenes because the main focal point of this set of scenes is Smart coming through the TV. And I think it's such an iconic scene in horror. It created a character for people to not only spoof, but there are other horror movies not related to any of this kind of horror that use that to this day. And I think it's such an iconic shot. And whoever came up with it, whether that was the original screenplay, I'm drawing a blank on that. or this American readaptation, I think that's fantastic. It's done so creepy and well. I agree with you though, Brian. It is very, very hard to not think of Brenda and the fight
Yeah.
scene from Scary
Yes.
Movie 3, which is, but again, I was able to kind of compartmentalize that this time. I think that as funny, and by the way, that's the best movie in Scary, or the best scene in Scary Movie 3. It's probably the best scene in all the Scary movies, to be honest, because it's so funny and they play it so serious up to the point where she sticks her hands out and she's swinging at Brenda and it's not working. But in this movie, I think it's done so well. It's not something the first time I watched this movie I expected. I'd seen that shot, but it was almost like I was so out of the loop that I almost just thought that was either one of the like a sequel or a shot they didn't use and it was just for the trailer or something. Like really, I was like, God, where's the scene with the TV? What's the freaking deal here, man? And so we finally got to that, and I'm like, whoa, that is good stuff. And so that is again, I like that false sense of security you talked about. Oh, they're going to be fine. Nope, they're not going to be fine. Creepy girl through the TV. And I like the ending where one, she's been evil this whole time. I like that they reveal that in this movie. They hammer on it more in the Japanese original, but they still hammer on it here. You're not supposed to have any sympathy for this character. She's evil. She's always been evil, and the parents were right to go absolutely crazy about it in the first place. So you're not really supposed to feel sympathy, and I like that they touch on that. And I like that the the reason she lives is because she made a copy of this tape. And I think that's a really good way to kind of make it work because look, obviously she saw the tape, he saw the tape. They're both supposed to die. Why in the world is she still alive? I love you were supposed to help her. What are you doing? Like I think that's really good. So just some really good stuff in the ending set of scenes. I will say the very, very end is a little flat. And I feel like there could have been some kind of interaction between Samara and our Holly. I'm drawing a blank. Rachel, excuse me. I I just I would have liked to see a little bit more interaction with those two, but again, not too much to complain about here. I just think the crawl into the TV thing takes the cake, and the effects you get afterwards are really good. So, job well done.
I got a question. Did Aiden make a copy of the tape too? Was that what was going on at the end?
That's why she was taking his fingers and pushing it, like making him make the copy.
Okay, I was just making sure because I was about to say he should have died too because he didn't make a copy, but I remembered he did make a copy at the end. Okay, but y'all got any more final thoughts before we move on?
She also lives because she helped Samara. All she ever wanted to do was be heard, and by making a copy of the tape, she was able to be like it's all there. Again, some of that gets lost in the American version, but it is there. She technically does help her, and so that's another reason that they live because they make copies of the tape, and more people were able to see the tape, and blah 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 and stuff like that. So that's kind of why. That's why the dad lived. That's why everything. So again, just I a lot of hidden stuff that I don't think the American version just has time to touch on, but it's in the Japanese version. I still think this American version is better as far as a horror movie goes, but just some comparisons between the two to kind of wrap it up.
All right, so here's a question I have though that confuses me then about that. She made the copy before she did all this stuff. Like if all she had to do was make a copy, why'd she have to find the well, bury the
Right.
body? It's like,
well, she didn't know that.
and to be fair,
right?
Noah was there helping her too the whole time. So if just making a copy was good enough, why'd she have to go find the body? I don't know. This movie confuses the hell out of me, even though it's good, to be honest. We got a couple fan questions. Let's go ahead and knock them out real quick. And y'all two have already kind of touched on this a lot. But Mark_Hef on Instagram wrote, I thought this was a really good adaptation of the original. I can't comment on this because I haven't seen the sequels or the Japanese version. The sequels weren't great. The second was okay. But the third rings can suck it from the back, to quote a great man. He's talking about you, Mike. Unfortunately,
talking
the
about me,
scary.
but he's pooping on a movie I like.
Hey, he still thinks you're a great man, though.
Thank you, Mark.
Unfortunately, the scary movies have ruined watching this for me now, as all I can think of is a scary movie fight they did with Samara. He put the laughing
That's
emoji
funny.
and says, "How about you guys?" And I know you two have said that, but honestly, it doesn't really bother me. Like scary movie 3, the stuff I remember the most is like the fake Michael Jackson and the aliens and with Charlie Sheen, and I always think about Simon Rex doing like the KKK symbol at the 8 Mile revent. I remember that stuff more than I remember the Samara fight personally. But what about y'all? Y'all think of the Samara fight with Brenda? Does that kind of ruin the ending for y'all?
Yeah. No, it doesn't ruin it for me, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, you have to compartmentalize it. I just hate that you have to do that to begin with. So, yeah.
Right.
I agree that for some people, I'm sure Ring is affected by it, but I think like Scream is affected way more, in my
Scream
opinion.
definitely gets the shaft in that department. As far as the first part
I
of that
think,
question,
yeah, Scream is
go
just
ahead,
also
Nico.
has comedic elements to itself too. So
Right.
you know, but the Ring is so dark and stuff. I think that kind of saves it a little bit, and just
Right.
in my opinion. And Michelle Mirza, do you want to say something else? I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to answer the first part of that question, I think that the direct sequel to this movie is just okay. I think Rings was a really good callback. I don't know what he's talking about over there. And I highly suggest if you ever get a chance and find it available for you where it doesn't cost you a lot of money, to go out of your way to watch Ringu. I think it's worth a watch as long as you pay attention with the subtitles. It's not as eerie, it's not as creepy, but I do think it's an effective horror movie. So
Hey, do you have to watch Ring 2 to watch Rings, or
no,
is it just completely separate?
no, you
Oh,
don't
okay.
have to watch. But I would watch Ring 2 because some of the stuff we have about this movie gets answered in that movie.
Okay, fair enough. Michelle Mirza asked a question on Facebook, and she kind of asked the same question when we did Orphan. I think this movie is really good. When it comes to horror movies, do you guys find it more creepy or less creepy when it's a child that's a stalker or killer? And I'll answer it first. For this movie, no. Samara being a kid doesn't change it at all to me because I just see her as like a demonic presence, honestly, or a
Right.
ghost or whatever, and it's creepy as hell. Her being a little girl apparently doesn't. Her being a kid doesn't really affect me that much in this movie. What y'all think?
I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I like if it's a good, well written character. It doesn't matter if it's an adult or a child.
Right. I think it can affect the movie, but in this movie, I don't think that there's much of a difference. It could have been an adult and it'd been just as creepy. But I do think there is something about a kid that is a straight up stone cold killer that is creepy. Like The Omen and stuff like that. So I think it can be done, but not in this film.
Now I will say, like what Brian was reading, if the death had been more intense with Samara, that might have changed my opinion though. I'm kind of glad they did cut out all that extra brutality for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into fun facts real quick. I'll just knock mine out. I got them all from IMDb. On its first week of release in the U.S. and Canada, select cinemas put actual copies of the cursed tape on seats for unsuspecting viewers as freebies. The cursed video is now available as an Easter egg feature on the DVD. Until Stephen King's It 2017, this movie was the highest grossing horror remake in history, with a total worldwide gross of over $249 million. It sold more than 2 million DVD copies in the U.S. alone in its first 24 hours of video release. That's incredible. There are no title cards or opening credits to the movie, although there is a flash of The Ring during the DreamWorks logo. And we've already kind of talked about this too. For the choice of the film's color, it was decided that everything was to be tinged with the color green to give the film a sickly, unnatural feeling. Sets were also lit in a way that none of the characters have a shadow to create an almost subconscious sense of creepiness. And this is the last one I have. The role of Rachel was first offered to Jennifer Connelly, who would later star in another Japanese horror remake, Dark Water. The script was then offered to Jennifer Love Hewitt, to Gwyneth Paltrow, Kate Beckinsale, and finally to Naomi Watts. And I'm glad Naomi Watts got it, honestly, because she was
Me too.
amazing in this. Anybody else got some fun
Yeah.
fact?
Yeah, and to play off that, Jennifer Love Hewitt turned it down because she didn't want to be typecast as a scream queen. How'd that work out for you, Jennifer Love Hewitt?
Uh, I'll never
So,
understand that. By the way, work is work.
yeah, exactly. And plus, I think was it Muse Watson? Who was it? I think it was him that touched on just the stigma from playing horror movies back then. A lot of people wouldn't hire you because you were like typecast as that, but that's gone, and that was definitely gone in the late '90s. Well, when Jennifer Love Hewitt was there,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, that's ridiculous. I
You're
only have
absolutely
two
right,
other.
Brian.
I only have two other ones. Hans Zimmer score. I love Hans Zimmer. This is the actual first collaboration between director Gore Verbinski and Hans Zimmer. Ever since then, Zimmer has composed he's composed the music for every Verbinski directed film, except for A Cure to Wellness. And lastly, midway through the movie, Rachel actually rents some movies. This was another deleted scene. And I touched on most all of them except for this one, but midway through the movie, Rachel rents some movies and gets laughs from one of the employees over her picks. This led to an alternate ending in which Rachel actually put the cursed tape in a sleeve of one of her rented movies and returned it to the store, where it ended up under employee picks.
Ooh, that would have been good, but it would have completely pooped on the sequel. So I'm not spoil anything for you guys. Okay, I'm so glad you mentioned Hans Zimmer because man, anytime I could talk about Lion King on this show, I will. The great Hans Zimmer, composer of the Lion King music, not only Lion King music, but like every movie ever, literally Inception, like The Dark Knight, the Batman Begins. Like Hans Zimmer has done so freaking much. I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I had wrote down that I was going to talk about if nobody else did. So I'm glad you brought up the goat of music of movie music, Hans Zimmer.
Oh yeah, he's right up there with John Williams on just famous
Absolutely.
movies that he's done. Absolutely.
Shout out to Can You Feel the Love Tonight? All right, so The Ring, well, it was made on a $48 million budget and grossed $249 million. So, A, that of course that warranted a sequel, but B, really, really well done for a movie that kind of came in between 90s Scream inspired slasher dump that we got there and right
Saw.
before right it was right in that sandwich, right in that time where horror wasn't really picking up a lot of steam, and this is kind of a movie that really scared audiences again. And it's, we kind of talked about on this show, we've talked about movies that are quote unquote smart horror movies that, if you maybe you don't like those movies, other horror fans think you're an idiot. And this kind of falls into the category. A lot of times, it is a very smart horror movie. The original is a smart horror movie, but I don't think that this movie kind of crossed that to me. It was done so well and shot so well that you might not have known everything that was going on, but something you can know is that little girl is creepy and she's coming out of the well. So it's really hard to knock anyone that likes this movie for other things that you might not like it for. So I think this is one of those movies that kind of crosses the stock horror fan that people kind of make fun of, and then there's the smart people that insist Midsummer is the best movie ever made, which I'll never understand. But anyway.
All righty, let's jump into our rating and favorite kill and least favorite kill. Who wants to go first tonight? Anyone in particular?
I'll go first. Let's do it. I'll knock mine out first.
All right.
All right. So, again, my favorite kill. So, my favorite kill is Richard Morgan. I don't think there's a cooler death in the whole movie to me. It is a little over the top, but it's really difficult to see all that and then actually go through with it. I think it was a really cool kill. There's not a ton of kills in the film, so as far as what you get to see. So, as ones we get to see, I think his is kind of the coolest death. My least favorite kill is the off-screen ones that don't really matter, like that we didn't really see. Again, so my rating for this, we talked about enjoyability at the beginning, and I do feel like this movie gets not more enjoyable, and I want to point this out. It gets better as time goes on, because the stuff I tend to like more now than I did the first time I watched it, which is something Nico touched on. and so that is heightened. But the enjoyability factor is tough. It is a long movie to me. Again, my 90-minute kind of cutoff was tested here at 2 hours and 2 minutes or whatever it was. It ran a little long, but for me, this movie is it's so well shot, it's so well made. Screenplay is great, the acting is great, and it's genuinely a scary horror movie, which after about a month and a half of doing horror comedy, I was ready for. Let me tell you, I was ready for something a little more dark and, and a little more serious. You can't get any more opposite of Leprechaun than this film. So all those things being said, I give this movie an 8.5. I think it's really, really good. And now my enjoyability factor probably a little lower, but just as far as the movie itself, it's kind of hard to go or hard for me to go any lower because I like the movie a lot and I would rate it very highly. And I bought the Blu-ray. It's on its way here.
All right, I'll go next real quick. My favorite kill, I picked Noah. I just wrote that scene is iconic and it's incredible, even if you don't necessarily see the kill. Dude, when she crawls out of that TV and just has that little flash in front of him, that shit's amazing. Uh, I pulled a Brian on this, my least favorite. I picked the horse because I really don't have a least favorite kill. Fuck that horse. Rating. I wrote the power of a rewatch and fresh perspective. I watched this a few months ago with my girlfriend and liked it. Rewatching for the show, and I realized this movie is brilliant. The constant feel of dread, the acting of all of them, but especially Naomi Watts, the tension in the opening scene and Noah's death scene is superb. What holds this movie back for me is it's not very rewatchable. It's a bit too long, and I've already said all this. All the shots of the waves and trees and sun, I thought was a little unnecessary. And I wrote also, I'm still also confused at the ending, but regardless, I give this movie an 8.5. While there are movies I've rated lower than this,
Wow.
I'd rather rewatch. This film is great and I highly recommend it. I'd say it's a must watch at least once for any horror fan.
Wow.
Yep.
Look at that. A little same rating. Little Eskimo Brothers. Oh wait, my bad. Okay, so obviously, brother Dustin was not with us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and read what he sent me here. I'm going to go in a little bit of a reverse of what the order he put it in, though. Brother Dustin says, I would have loved to have been part of this episode, but I think it's best I take some time away. I haven't felt like myself the last couple of episodes and don't want my contributions to be hindered. I feel like a lot of my best qualities I have to offer centered around quick wit and banter. And until I can figure out how to reinvent myself, I think it's best I step away. So we're going to give Brother Dustin the time that he asked for here. And, we hope he's back with us as soon as possible. But he did send his thoughts on this film, and I think he's kind of in line with the rest of us in lockstep. I love this movie. It's probably the scariest movie you can find that's PG-13. I tend to agree with that. It's very difficult to find another one. I remember watching it when it came out and then watching it with my sister and her being terrified of it. My uncle used to call when we'd be over at his house and say 7 days to my sister on the phone, and she'd cry for hours. I think this movie is really well done and it holds up over time. And I also think there are metaphors to be found. A lot of times people experience something traumatic and it ends up killing them. When if they'd only have shared it, maybe they could have pushed through, i.e. Rachel sharing with Noah and she lived. Samara wanted to be seen, heard, and loved, though those that aren't often the most dangerous members of society. Favorite death is Richard. Same, brother. He went all out and plugged every appliance in the county up to make sure he was electrocuted. Least favorite death. I didn't really have one. Would have been Samara because suffocating with a bag and pushing down a well was a messed up thing for her mom to do, but she didn't die. Still messed up, but she survived, so I can't count it. He gave this movie an 8. So we're all in the same ballpark. Brian, he's going to end up doing a 5.5 because he's low enjoyability. Here we go.
Yeah, I fucking hate this movie. I just no, actually, hey, I'm actually right there with everybody else, and it wasn't because of peer pressure. I promise I had it written down before, but I love Nico's least favorite kill. I actually had Noah as my favorite kill, so I'm just going to pick both of his. And I've gone into this movie and how much how I really feel about it, and how much I really honestly like this movie. What Nico said was perfect. It's definitely something that every horror movie or every horror fan should watch at least once. While yes, the rewatchability does go down after you've seen it once, that can be said about a lot of movies. To have good rewatchability sometimes doesn't mean that it's a great movie to begin with. It's just entertaining. So, I actually gave this movie an 8.5 as well. So I'm right there
Wow.
with it.
I have to send the things. I'm not good at the averages, but I'm
I'm
sure
getting the
it's
composite right now. We got
okay. Here we go.
8.375 is what we gave it. And IMDb with 323,000 ratings gave it a 7.1. So we're
Those
above
stupid
IMDb.
idiots.
They don't know what they're
Stupid
doing on
idiot.
IMDb.
Yeah, I would say. It's almost
Hey,
like we know what
it's
we're doing
always
on
the
this shit.
hater. It's always the haters leaving reviews, anyways.
Well, that can be said about a lot of things, including this show. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So hey, I'm glad we reviewed this movie. I'm glad I picked it. I kind of picked it on a whim, but I am really glad that I did. It wasn't random, but it was kind of like got to pick one. It just went back and forth. I made y'all pick a number. I remember doing that. You guys picked numbers, and the ring won out. So I'm kind of glad it did because
Thank
I
God.
wasn't looking forward to sitting through the grudge.
Right.
But what I will say is, for the most part, if we get a freestyle month and by the way, I'm still making Brian sit through my birthday pick, which is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. That's still coming, by the way.
I'm not doing birthday picks anymore. Sorry. Fresh
No, no,
out. Fresh
no, 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 no. I got a rain check birthday pick, and it's Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I can't wait. But also,
Oof.
when we get these freestyle months, I'm going to try to keep that track record up of just picking some of the bigger films that we haven't covered. So in the summer, you'll probably get Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which again is a film that's pretty good, but I don't think it has high rewatchability. Jaws, same thing. I don't want to sit around and watch Jaws all the time, but I know that it's so beloved that eventually at some point we need to cover it. So I look forward to doing more of these.
And just to speak on the rewatchability factor, I think like if it's just like a random Wednesday and you want to watch a movie, it's low. But if you think that you want to watch The Ring, it's very enjoyable. I think like if you're in that right mood and you want to watch the movie, it's not painful by any means. It's just it's not a fun movie. I would say it's just a really good movie.
I highly recommend you two and anyone listening that hasn't to just watch the rest of the franchise. Like I would say
I definitely will. Yeah.
I think there's going to be some problems that you both have in The Ring 2. I can already see a big gripe with Nico coming, but I'll save it. I'll let him figure it out. But for the most part, I think you guys will at least enjoy parts of it, and it continues the story. Rings doesn't necessarily continue the story, but it adds layers to the story, and I think that's pretty good. So,
any more final thoughts before I announce my pick next week?
No, let's hear it.
All right. And to be fair, I think even though Mike has definitely picked some of the most iconic movies, I think with a lot of our freestyle picks, we've kind of picked some off the wall, whether it be a cult classic or something like that. That's kind of what I'm doing too. Next week, my pick, I'm picking 2014's It Follows. This is a really unique movie. There's nothing really like it out there that I can think of. It's kind of like an indie horror movie, I would say, kind of gone big, maybe. I think it's pretty
definitely
good.
a cult classic.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and say I love this movie, but I do like it for what it is. It's different. It's unique. So I'm looking forward to us reviewing it. And I already know we have some different views from some of the co-hosts. So it's going to make for a good discussion episode, I think, for sure.
Hey, Nico, if you took the word follows off that, it'd be a great movie. All right, we'll see y'all next week.
Not if it's the miniseries. Just kidding. I've never even seen it.
Jesus.
We're not surprised. We're really not surprised.
People knew I hadn't seen the miniseries 50 episodes ago, and ain't nothing changed.
That's true. That's true. And by the way, I like that you guys pick, or even me sometimes pick some of those movies, so I can pick these movies. So we have a little yin and yang there. So we're not always covering Silence of the Lambs style movies. We can cover freaking Jason Takes Manhattan, which is a dog shit film, but I still love the episode. I think we did a really good job.
That was unnecessary to hate. But anywho. Hey, Mike, great pick. It got really damn good reviews from all of us. Hope y'all enjoy this episode. We'll be back next week. We appreciate all support. 7 days. Just want to remind everybody.